All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to go. We got our spinning wheels going. We're still going. 1 and 2. There we go. Welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday morning, August 3rd, and I'm back. It's time to talk a little bit of Broncos for breakfast. Scott, how you doing? Did you miss me? What's new?
I did. I only did about half the shows I'd planned on doing because you weren't here. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'd get up and I'm like, I can do this. Or, I did go Tuesday. So Tuesday was the Broncos for breakfast with all this stuff going on. I'm like, well, I can hold down 45 minutes. I got plenty to talk about. But yeah, it's good to have your workout buddy. It's like I don't mind letting myself down, but I don't want to let you down. So and I hate letting everybody else down. That's the thing. But it's great to have you back. I know you've had a blast.
Yeah, I just got back from the Sawtooths in Idaho. Beautiful, beautiful country. Did about 67 miles over 6 days, and I think we were approaching 14,000 feet of elevation and caught a lot of fish. It was really great. A lot of really, really cool, underrated area, not too far from Boise. So if you get a chance to get out there in the summertime, I do think it's probably best as a backcountry expedition kind of area. It's kind of hard to do your day hikes in there and see things because things are pretty far back there. But 6 days, 5 nights, and then the last night there was a hot spring that we stayed at pretty nearby and enjoyed that as well. So it was a good trip and excited to get back into the groove of things now.
I've been up there once. My cousin lives in Sun Valley, so
Oh,
good area. No, I don't know if it wasn't like that then.
okay,
I mean, they're not broke, but they're not,
yeah,
they weren't loaded.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's
good times.
it's a wealthy area now. Somebody that we met out there does a lot of like gigs and whatnot, and they meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has a house out there in Sun Valley. And Arnold always jokes that he is by far the poorest person on his hill. So I think there's a lot of money in Sun Valley now, but
Wow, that was a
beautiful
long
area.
time ago. I was still in California, so that's probably 15 years ago
Yeah, I
when
think
I
it's
was up there.
exploded. But let's say hello to some people coming in here. I know that we've been gone for a bit, or not as back on normal, so still have a few more things coming up, but we'll be kicking into more of high gear here with football just right around the corner now. And we're in training camp, so you guys are going to have to bring me up to speed. I did the best I could, but I was without any sort of cell service for a while. So let's say hello. First, we got to say hello to our guy, Mark Schrader, coming in $10, saying good morning with the super chat. Good to see you, Mark. Hope you're doing well and hope everything's great down there in Texas. I know it's been pretty darn hot, so hope you're doing well and staying cool. Also, another super chat coming in here. David Cremello. It's good to see you, Dave. Hope you're doing well. Excited for your Broncos and Bears this year. He says, number one, Tim Patrick will be badly missed. Russell Wilson may be above and beyond repair. And Tim Patrick might have been only worth 1+ win this season. Both can be true. Excuse me. Yes, both can be true. Tim Patrick is going to be missed, no doubt. He was somebody who I think was as much of a mentality thing as he was on the field. A very physical player, a very demanding player, kind of a dog out there, not to lean into cliches. And I'm not sure if they have that kind of guy now on the in the skill positions. Somebody who is that physical, mean presence out there that Tim Patrick kind of brings. So I definitely think 1.5, maybe even 2 wins because the synergistic effect of helping the quarterback out could be impactful with Tim Patrick, but. That means guys like Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, who we talked about potentially trade targets last year or last offseason, have to step up. Your Marvin Mims has to step up. Maybe Marquez Callaway can be a guy now. Brandon Johnson. There's also been an undrafted free agent rookie who's been stepping up as a wide receiver whose name's escaping me right now. So when the guy goes down like this, it sucks. I feel really bad for Tim Patrick more than anything else. But there's going to be opportunities for other guys to step up. And maybe Russell Wilson is beyond repair. We're going to find out this season.
And I'm going to say no. Set this up as a math equation. No, both cannot be true. Because if 2 is true, 1 is not. If 2, Russell Wilson may be above and beyond repair, then Tim Patrick will not be badly missed. So I said that those both cannot be true. If Russell Wilson is playing well, then Tim Patrick could definitely be badly missed because you're looking at something else. Now, if you're saying it's not even saying playing well. Well, Tim Patrick could have helped Russell Wilson play better, but that's not what the statement is. The statement is maybe above and beyond repair. If that's true, it doesn't matter who your wide receivers are. So no, they both can't be true. You're hoping that neither ends up being true, honestly. And there's guys that step up and fill the gaps, so to speak. that he has left, but he's left a gap for over a year, and there's been plenty of guys that have had a chance to step up. Now, can Cortland Sutton move up? Can Jerry Jeudy move up? And I think, Marvin Mims isn't necessarily going to miss him because he's never known him. You can't miss what you never had. He got to see him work and do all those kind of things. But there's another question in here that, is Marquez Callaway the number 3? And we'll get into that. But I think there's some writing on the wall about the questions about the wide receiver room when you trade up to the second to get Marvin Mims.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's going to be opportunities, and losing Tim Patrick, and also do want to also mention KJ Hamler, obviously, as well, a footnote on that one. But that's also unfortunate because he was the ultimate, wild card, and we both were not depending on him. But he's out now with a heart condition that came up. Am I incorrect in saying that? I think it was a heart thing. So hoping for the best to both Tim and KJ. Life sounds like maybe life after football for KJ coming up here, but hoping
maybe
for the best.
He could be back. They've left the door open for passing the medical test and all this type of stuff, that he could be back.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Patrick could be back too. You just start wondering after 4 season-ending type of injuries at 30 years old. And lucky, I won't say lucky for him, he earned it. But he's financially set. He got $17 million guaranteed from this latest contract. He's in his 30s. The competitor in him will probably want to give it one more try.
Yeah,
but we will see. We will see.
Yeah, and Taylor Grimes is the undrafted free agent from Incarnate Word, who's had some splash plays in training camp. So, asked around because I'd again been off the grid and like, hey, I haven't been there at training camp. What's the word? And Taylor Grimes was one of the names that was fed back to me as somebody to pay attention to, and also a guy that we liked last year in Brandon Johnson has been making some moves as well. So there's going to be opportunities there. Hopefully somebody can step up. Michael Ronquillo, always stepping up here on the show, says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and Buckham. Good to see you, Michael. Hope you're doing well down there in Tucson. Hopefully you're staying cool. We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, and Michael must have missed you. Came in with the big stars today. So thank you, Michael. Yeah. Appreciate you helping to kick our August off with a bang.
That's
on
awesome,
Broncos
Michael.
for breakfast. You're always appreciated, my friend.
Appreciate you, Michael. We got Kevin Gray in here. Morning, Nick and Scott. Big Mile High salute. Happy Thursday. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Bama X says, good morning. Good to see you, Bama X. We got Jeremy Sean saying, morning, boys. I have a feeling the preseason games will take on a bigger level of importance with the reporting from training camp being so limited. It'll be hard not to overreact. I mean, it's always hard to overreact or not to overreact because of how thirsty we are for any new information, especially at this point in the offseason. Anything we can get, or I guess not the offseason, but training camp, anything we can get, especially, Scott and I will try to not make it big potatoes, but we're going to cover it. So it's going to be hard not to overreact, but it's always, just a piece of the puzzle and progressing to bigger and more important things over time. But no doubt, yeah, the preseason games are going to be important. And not just because we're limited on information from training camp, but because it sounds like Sean Payton is going to play a lot of the important players and starters. So they're definitely going to be important.
They need to. When you're doing installs of new offense, new defenses, they need to get reps. That's how you get better. I know it's a 17-game season, and while Nick is hacking up trail dust, we'll cover him a little bit. But yeah, you get better through playing. You learn through playing. And I've heard several coaches say it, and I firmly believe it. The best way to learn is to do and fail, and to improve on, learn, and get better. So, some of as far as the preseason games taking on a big level of importance, again, can one be true without the other on this one? Yes, I think it can take a bigger level of importance, but I don't think it has anything to do with the reporting from training camp being so limited. I think that's completely opposite. It may take on a bigger scale to the public because, hey, more people are going to be tuning in to see what's going on because we don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's the NFL. The NFL's huge anyway. But it's going to take on a bigger level of importance for the players because they need to get their repetitions in and get going, not stand around all August and then show up for the first game with their first live snaps.
Yeah. Yep. So it'll be big, and Scott and I will obviously be here to cover it and talk to what we see and hopefully give you guys all the information on it. We also got the Cristiano coming in here saying the Riley Moss injury explained by the Fabian Moreau signing. I know Scott is not a big fan of Fabian Moreau, so I'll leave that one for you. But Riley Moss has a core injury surgery, sets him back 4 weeks. Broncos said they brought Fabian Moreau in. We're impressed with him. I still think it's Damari Harris's job to lose there on the boundary. Fabian Moreau at least maybe can be your first guy off the bench. I know he struggled with the Falcons, but it sounds like the Broncos were excited to bring him in. So hoping for the best. I did like him coming out of UCLA all those years ago as a day 3 option, and he stuck around the league long enough to be considering I think he ended up going round 3, but stuck around the league long enough. So he hasn't been a total bust, but did not play
No,
great.
he was a total bust in Atlanta. He was just awful. Just horrible on a team full of Chicago Bears and Tennessee Titans rejects that the Falcons pulled off the waiver wires to build their team because they were $80 million in dead cap money. So their defense was full of Grady Jarrett, AJ Terrell, day 3 draft picks, and veteran minimum guys. He was the worst. I mean, Steven Means only hit the quarterback twice in 15 starts, and Fabian Moreau was worse than him. Can he be better? Absolutely. I don't know what it was, but my biggest problem with him, with Fabian Moreau, is the lack of effort. That will not fly, and he won't make the team, so you don't have to worry about it. He was a starter in Atlanta, so the Falcons did have to worry about it. But he basically if there was a running play come in his direction, he basically would let himself get blocked out of bounds. Just forego, the Olay on the outside, and it was just dreadful to watch. You don't have to worry about that because that won't stand. If he's not throwing a helmet in and being physical, he'll never make the team. So, can't body for now. We'll see. But he was making just under $1 million on a vet minimum in New York, and they opted not to bring him back. So, again, he's got some on his resume, but like we've been saying with Dalton Reisner, who, hey, look at this. He started this many games, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he was bad. He was bad. But you're not counting on him to come in and be a starter. So you're in a pretty good situation here. Thought this was pretty damn funny. This was one of those you had me in the first half. Wang Chung says, I'm blasting Broncos for breakfast as loud as I can, and my neighbors threw a rock through my window so that they could listen better. Just open the window, man. Turn it up for them. Invite them over for coffee. Broncos for breakfast. Socialize a little bit. And I'm sorry about your window, dude, but, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, hopefully no bugs come in. Tired of the bugs for sure. I'm happy. Man, it felt good to sleep in a bed the other day. But I appreciate the fun. Wang Chung always has some fun comments coming in. Ethan missed you. Hope you're doing well. Says good morning, gents in Broncos country. Good to see you. With First No Fear says good morning, Nick, Scott, and all Broncos country. Do you guys think Marquez Callaway will be the third receiver instead of Marvin Mims? I don't. I think if it was Marquez Callaway versus the field, not including Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Marvin Mims, I might even take the field there for that one, just because Callaway, he definitely has a chance to have a bigger role now, especially with Tim Patrick out. But we know that Sean Payton likes to use a lot of different personnel packages. Maybe he leans more into tight ends. He talked about using Dulcich as a H-back and kind of out of the backfield more. Maybe that's the direction they go. But no doubt losing Tim Patrick's going to hurt, especially it sounded like in training camp they're using Tim Patrick in a lot of quick hitters over the middle kind of stuff. And we know that Sean Payton liked to do that with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas. So things have to change there. We'll see how it plays out. But I think it'll be Marvin Mims over Marquez Callaway. I mean, any team could have signed Callaway. Broncos traded up to get Mims. Just looking at the investment that they placed in each of these guys, I think Mims is more likely to be the third, assuming everybody's healthy.
I know. And you could be talking about, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. When I think of third wide receiver, I think who has the third most receptions. And I don't think Callaway comes in the top 5.
Well, I'm hoping it's Javonte Williams.
Right. Javonte Williams could end up being your number 1 wide receiver, receiver, not wide receiver, but receiver. You keep an eye on P. Ryan, keep an eye on McLaughlin, for goodness sakes, Dulcich, et cetera, that as far as receiving option goes, I don't think Callaway is in the top 5 at the end of the season.
Yeah, and if he is, it's probably.
But I knew what you meant, and no, I still think the answer is no. I think health-wise, I agree with Nick. It's Sutton, Judy, Mims.
I would go Judy, Sutton, Mims, but yes.
Either way, I wasn't putting those in any order. I would think Judy. I think Judy leads the team in receiving yards this year. Yeah. I agree. If that's what you said, I agree with that.
Yeah. Zach Powers, morning. Good to see you, Zach. We got Jamal Killings in the house saying morning Broncos country. My guy Dom Ahamio in here saying good morning, Nick, Scott, and Broncos country. Good to see you. US Dave saying buenos dias. Greg Smith, good to see you. Aloha. Good morning, Broncos for breakfast. Denver Broncos for life. Bama X gave me a hard time saying Nick's being a slacker, thinks he'd up and Broncos country and he goes off the grid. Yeah, I came back. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening. Nathaniel Hackett, Sean Payton. I left right when Sean Payton made some comments about, things not being good there. And then we see the Hackett and Rodgers stuff. I guess you probably already had a chance to talk about this, the Hackett Payton stuff. Me, I don't give a hoot. Code, glass houses. Sean Payton's got enough, as we like to say on here, skins on the wall. If he wants to come in and spice things up a bit, I think Sean Payton is comfortable enough in what he's done that he can come in and talk his bleep. But it can look. He needs to be able to back it up too in Denver coming forward. A lot of people are going to put a lot on that Week 5 game, but for me, it's much more about turning the team around and having a good product on the field and competitive football come December, January than whatever they do in Week 5 versus the Jets.
Is it considered unsportsmanlike in glass houses? Yeah, I agree with Hackett on that one. Do I particularly care? Not really. I don't.
No.
Does it matter in the grand scheme of things? No, not a bit. And it's the same thing that goes with trash talking. I kind of find it juvenile. I don't care. It's like, oh, you gave them bulletin board material, man. If you need someone else's talk to get you motivated for a game, you're
in trouble.
In trouble, yeah, you're in a lot of trouble. It's like, well, it'll make it worse if you lose. Well, so what? You still lose. A loss is a loss. How you take it, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly care. Do I agree with Hackett? It's like, hey, we're kind of, it's kind of a fraternity, et cetera, et cetera. You don't. It's a little bit out of line. Yeah, it is out of line. It is. If we are walking these lines with these coach speak things, it is. It is out of that line of what we expect from coaches. Do I really care? No, I don't.
No.
I don't care. It was handled. It's over. Done with. They'll bring it back up again in Week 5. And, I like how Sean Payton finished with it. Was, do you care to comment on the X's comments? I don't remember if it was Nathaniel Hawkins. He's like, nope, we're past it. Yes, yeah, we are. It's over. It's not going to win games. It's not going to lose games. Might make you feel worse if you lose them, but you're still losing them. That's on you. One of those things, Nick. No one can make you feel bad but about yourself except you.
Yeah.
One of those things, right? I don't care. I don't care what they say. I really don't.
Yeah. For me, I wish, and this is obviously being Broncos biased lens on this one, which we try to fight, but I think it'd been better if Hackett would have been like, yeah, it was shitty last year. Sorry to cuss, but it was bad, and we should have been better.
Did, though. He's like, he kind of did. I was expecting to hear all these comments about what a bad job it was. I own that. I kind of did. But as I've said, nobody who spoke negatively about what, including me, including anybody, including Hackett, including Rodgers, nobody said Sean Payton was wrong.
No.
Nobody. So that might be part of it too. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was a historically bad coaching job last year.
Yeah.
For a litany of reasons.
Yep. Don't feel bad for any of them either. If somebody fire me and pay me.
Nathaniel Hackett get last year. I mean, they had to pay him out of probably a 3 or 4 year contract. He probably got $30 million last year for 15 games that he coach?
I think so. Yep. Yeah, that would be
not feeling too bad for this man.
A good gig. Yeah. But David Bishop, good morning, guys. Good to see you, David. Isaiah Stacks in the house in Broncos country. How we feeling? We're feeling good. We're excited. Dom Ramiro says, well, Nick, a rookie running back is fast as hell. And Justin and Zach are killing on defense. Offensive line is doing okay. I've heard the offensive line has been up and down in pass protection, but that's not too surprising early on. That does make me a little bit worried given the lack of elite talent on the defensive line that the Broncos have, in my perspective. But it's still very early as well. And that's one of the bigger questions. I know we were very excited about the potential of Zach Strief coming in here as the Broncos offensive line coach, first-time coach for the offensive line. He was an assistant offensive line coach, and he's been considered a rising good offensive line coach, but first-timer, and a lot of new pieces in the offensive line as well. So that could take time, but offensive line and how that comes together and how that looks is going to be very big for how this offense can function this season. I think that's actually probably Russell Wilson's number one, but behind that, it's how good this offensive line can be around that. Because if you have a matchup-proof offensive line, you can go in any week and kind of dictate the terms of interactions on the field. And the Broncos have not been able to do that the last, since like 2006, maybe. And hopefully you can have that with Sean Payton, considering that's been a Bill Parcells just tenant that he's wanted for a number of years, a key pillar. So we'll see, but hopefully the offensive line continues to improve, because what I've heard is that they've been up and down, and specifically in pass protection.
Well, and wasn't their strength last year.
No,
You've got
Soft.
How many players back? You've got 3 of the 5 back, and one of them's coming off a pretty serious injury. So there's work to be done. There's plenty of work to be done.
Yeah. And that's another reason, like all these preseason offensive line rankings of the Broncos are like ranked 10th or 12th. It's like, I'll believe it when I see it. I know they spent a lot of money on it, but a lot of question marks still in that unit, and hoping for the best. Because again, that's going to be, if they have a good offensive line this year, that can go a long way. Dom talking about thank you, Dom. Good to see you. Alberto coming in saying, good morning, fellas. Let's go Broncos. Let's have a great day today. Absolutely. Austin H says, if there's a silver lining about the Tim Patrick injury, was out last year at least. The team is used to being out for a year. Yeah, I mean, they're used to him being out, but they also all really love Tim Patrick as well as a person. He seems like a great guy and a glue guy in that locker room. And for this to happen to him again, it's definitely some heavy hearts in Broncos country going on right now. It's just, he threw his helmet across the field. He knew what was happening. I mean, it's just, it really sucks. And I think about Tim Patrick. I don't know him personally, but by all accounts, sounds like a great dude. I think about him as a person before I even think about what the ramifications are for the Broncos. But hopefully Broncos can figure out how to live without him.
About the time I about gave up on the NFL was an Achilles injury to Atlanta Falcons safety Keanu Neal. This reminded me of that, Nick. He was just coming on. He was in a Tim Patrick situation. Had just missed a previous season, comes back, tears an Achilles in the first game, rips his helmet off in anger, and they threw a personal foul penalty on him for taking his helmet off. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Guys, some common sense, please. And Austin, I agree with this. Like I've said, Tim Patrick, you're not missing him because he wasn't there last year. That'd make me feel better saying that if the offense wasn't historically bad last year. You were missing him last year. So if you had stepped up and been okay and filled in the gaps and done really well, fill the gap, bridge the gap. Boy, I think I've said that like 3 times today already. And things had been okay, I'd feel better about saying, okay, Tim Patrick's gone. But, and you were counting on him to be one of the guys to help lift you up from where it was last year. And that's the opportunity cost there of what's it going to cost you not having him. We'll never know, but it's I certainly wanted to see him out there for not just for his sake, obviously, but because of what he brings to this team.
Yeah. Yep. It's a bummer. And again, just thoughts to Tim Patrick, the person. Hopefully he's doing okay. I'm glad I know it stinks for the Broncos considering they paid him and then they've gotten very little back from him, but I'm happy again for him that he signed that contract beforehand and got that security because, man, really rough circumstances for him since that. And just terrible luck for the Broncos too, but again, it's happening to him.
Part of it in this game, right?
Yep.
Say, because his contract was under market 6 months later. Well, you got a bunch of guaranteed money in there. Good for you, and NFL's still the only sport that doesn't do guaranteed money. It's the most dangerous sport, and it's the one with the least amount of player protection out there. That's a different conversation, Nick.
Yeah. Yep. Leroy Williams, good to see you. This is Mile High Salute, guys. Good to see you. It's been a while since I've been on here. Well, glad to have you back. Question, will the Broncos bring in another veteran receiver or stick with their guns and have the next man up? I think that's going to be a next man up situation here. They might bring in another body, but I think it'll probably be, we're at the point now where guys I think are mostly here, unless there's, a few injuries, but I haven't heard them bringing in anybody at wide receiver. It seems like they have enough guys stand out. And again, we're getting close enough to the 90 to 53 man cutoff that I think you're going to have a much better pool of options in 3-4 weeks now. So I think that's probably more likely. And again, we've had enough question marks and potential ability at wide receiver that we can wait and see what happens in training camp and preseason and then reevaluate based on all that new information.
There are always moves being made. Always. I expect a receiver to be changed, added to this roster within the next month. It could be a guy that, again, it could be a camp body type. Could be tomorrow. Am I expecting a name guy to come in and contribute that you're going to sign in the next week? No, I'm not. Could you get one of those guys in 4 weeks that can come in and add to the rotation? Yes. So is there another need for a wide receiver? Probably. Do you want to go out and spend money on one right now? Or do you want to wait until, I think we did the math, Nick, there's about 12 wide receivers on every team right now. They might keep 6. It's 180 wide receivers that are about to hit the waiver wire. It's going to be some good players in there that you're going to have a shot at.
Yep. Without a doubt. So some guys I'm sure that Sean Payton and Broncos coaches have liked in the past, whether it be free agency or the draft, that they can circle back around on. So that's just kind of how the game goes. Cristiano, good morning. Good to see you. Phoenix Fire, Broncos Country, good morning. Listening at work. It's almost time. Absolutely is almost time. Miguel Santa Steven coming in here saying, good morning, fellas. Besides the defense tearing up in camp, what other good things are you guys hearing? I guess just more specifics on players stepping up and doing well. I mentioned Taylor Grimes earlier, wide receiver. He's been stepping up and having a pretty darn good camp. And another guy, we've been harping on defensive line in here, but sounds like PJ Mustipher, undrafted free agent from Penn State, has been having a heck of a camp as well. So maybe he's somebody who can give yourself some options, some depth on that line. And now that we know that Owazurike is probably going to be out for maybe ever, given the crazy stuff going on with Iowa State and his gambling charges and whatnot. But yeah, he's going to be out, and maybe PJ Mustipher can step up and become a big option on this team. He's another one who's been tearing it up and deserved a shout out at least this point in the process.
And two of the names that Jeremy mentions here, the good news, bad news is good. Benito and Cooper have looked great at the edge. The bad is they're going against Denver Broncos tackles. That's why I always say you've got to hedge every single thing you hear coming out of camp, because it's same on same. Russell Wilson's really struggling. Okay, is that because the defense has been that great? Is that because the offense are putting? Is that because he's pushing the envelope? I always said I didn't start snow skiing until I was 30. It's like, did you bust your ass? I'm like, yeah, I busted my ass, of course. If I'm not falling down, I'm not trying hard enough to get better. If I'm not making mistakes, I'm not pushing the envelope. You can only find your limit by failing. All of those cliches. So all of this stuff is internal. So yeah, we're hearing pretty good things about Nick Benito, hearing good things about Jonathan Cooper. But we're still in the show me phase of this. Okay, now let's see him do it against ones from another team that isn't wearing the same color helmet. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. I'm not gonna overreact too much to what we're seeing and or hearing at training camp right now.
Yeah, and when it comes to Benito and Cooper, yeah, stay healthy. God. When it comes to Cooper and Benito and the tackles, Scott will talk about this at Senior Bowl coverage as well, but right now, those type of situations in training camp and practices are set up to really favor the attackers at that position, because you're not having to worry as much about the run fits or whatnot, right? Like, it's not the super duper physical. You have to really buy in to what your gap is in run defense. You can cheat a little bit in some of the pass rush reps, which makes it harder for the tackles and easier for the edges. So hopefully
it's 90% speed and finesse,
and that's
Nick Benito.
That's Nick Benito's game. Yep. So for these guys, hopefully the actual, when it comes to the physicality of an actual game speed and how it's played when the run game, you has to be a factor played in. Hopefully the tackles can be better. And also considering Garrett Bowles' reported struggles early on, he's on watch. I know about, it was pretty early in the offseason, but there was talk about the Broncos approaching him with a restructure, not official, but allegedly. And then maybe him being on the trading block, if that wasn't agreed upon. That quickly went away, but that was, I think, talked about back in February, March, maybe. And his contract is super easy to move on from after this season. So maybe we are on Garrett Bowles' watch. I know the Broncos did bring back Cam Fleming, and Fleming last season was definitely a better run blocker than Garrett Bowles was last season, and just pretty much in general, especially in gap scheme. So we'll see what happens with Garrett Bowles going forward. But if he's struggling, he may not be long for this team after this season.
Yeah, he's got an $18 million cap hit against a dead cap of 8 next year. So you're saving $10 million just with a flat out cut, let alone with a trade. And you say, okay, we'll pay 5 if you pick up 8 of his 13 million. So he's vulnerable. He's vulnerable. And a lot of these guys are, Nick. We've said that all year. This entire roster, for the most part, except rewind back to January before the new guys that you've signed. Those guys are on long-term deals. They're part of the plan moving forward. Rewind back to January. Just about every single player on this team, their contract, every key player that you think of, Justin Simmons, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Garrett Bowles, Russell Wilson to a certain extent, has basically, I can make an out of from these guys after the 2023 season. So if they don't get it done, there will be a huge amount of changes for 2024. It'll be a burn this thing down and start over type of thing. There will be a lot of changes. So everybody's on notice for the most part.
as they should be after last season. Pearl Heater, good morning. Good to see you, Pearl. Hope you're doing well. Savage Boy, and hope Payton brings out that play where Simmons jumps over the line to block a field goal versus the Jets. That'd be great. Benjamin Flores, we see you, says, good morning, fellas. Everyone's tripping on these interceptions, but that's just our D showing out and then figuring out what Russ does best, what to probably stay away from where live bullets are flying. Maybe. It's one of those things where it's notable, but how important are these interceptions and Russell Wilson's reported struggles early on? Sean Payton will come out, and face the media and the fans and whatnot, and put on a positive face and not totally tear down Russ in this situation because he is the quarterback. But I do think it is notable if Russ is struggling, with placement. I think that one interception to Simmons, I think it was to Simmons yesterday, where it was supposed to be to Brandon Johnson. It was like nowhere near Brandon Johnson. That's on Wilson. That should be something you struggle about. Apparently, there was a play yesterday too where Wilson, turned around and had his back to the line of scrimmage and tossed it to a running back. And like if that was, off at all, that's a potential, massive loss of yards at best, if not a fumble. So I am concerned about Wilson. We'll see what happens. But my concern about Wilson is more so what we saw last season and needing to be shown that it's been corrected and improved upon versus the struggles so far in training camp. But I'll tell you, the reported struggles in training camp don't help my concerns.
Appreciate you, Benjamin. About time to get to the topic, 30 minutes in of Drew Sanders.
Yes, Drew Sanders. So, Scott, I'll tee this up for you. You sent me this earlier. CBS talking a little bit of betting. We don't have a betting sponsor right now, but that's okay. So we're talking about the Rookie of the Year options here, and you came across this and found Drew Sanders as somebody who's being hyped up by CBS.
Yeah, they were talking about here are the best bets for Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year, and here's a good midterm bet, and they came up with Drew Sanders, which was a little bit of a surprise to see that name out there. For I didn't expect it. That's for sure. That's one of the reasons I sent it to Nick. But CBS had this to say about I won't read the whole thing, but the best mid-range option. And the guy that wrote this, his name was Will Brinson, and he posted it today. I'll put this in the link. I want to give him some credit. But the odds on Drew Sanders are 30-1. And he just absolutely loves Drew Sanders. No one wants a linebacker, but he's exactly the type of player Sean Payton will tell Vance Joseph to unleash on situational basis to rush the passer. Music to your ears, Broncos country. Mm-hmm. He can move up. He can play inside. He can walk up to the line, play a stand-up edge, and freelance, come right up the gut. That you'll see him. You can see him do a lot of different things.
Yeah, so Drew Sanders, I think that it's hard to put him in as a favorite for this because right now he is, to me, third on the depth chart and not a starter. Now, if the Broncos hadn't just paid Alex Singleton and had brought in, a really cheap option to be that linebacker opposite Josie Jewell, and there was an obvious chance there for Sanders to step up and be that starter opposite Jewell, then I'd say, yes, this is actually a pretty good bet. Linebackers rack up stats. The media still likes, those kind of stats where they can be like, oh, look, tackles. We're going to vote for that one, even though tackles are not a great indicator. But I think that given that he is, I think, firmly behind Jewell and Singleton for now, makes it pretty hard for me to get behind Sanders being somebody I'd put money on for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, if an injury happens to either Singleton or Jewell, then giddy up. I think there's a good chance, but I just don't know if there's the opportunity right now for him to really be somebody that I would be betting on to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, I know it's a mid-range one. They're not saying he's a favorite or anything. I think the odds were 30-1, so not incredible odds for that, but I don't think I would be, just based on where I'm sitting, I don't know if I would vouch for putting money on Sanders as winning Defensive Rookie of the Year unless an injury occurs ahead of him.
Yeah, it just depends, because if he's going to get it, it's going to be from the sack numbers, not the tackle numbers, like you're saying. So if he situationally ends up playing more edge, he ends up with 50 tackles and 8 sacks, okay, his name will be in it. I think from an opportunity standpoint, though, it's going to be tough because you're looking at, Will Anderson is going to get a ton of snaps and he's going to be rushing the passer a ton. So he's going to be able to put up numbers. Is Tyree Wilson at Vegas going to be out there? But after that, it gets a little thin. I've heard good things about Lucas Van Ness at DL. But again, you're looking at the guys typically. Now, if you can get some interceptions and you're testing the rookie, that's one thing, Sauce Gardner. But sacks are going to be a big one on there. And for him to get it, he's going to have to be unleashed in the passing game, which is a possibility because he doesn't have to beat out Jewell and Singleton to get a spot rushing the passer.
Yeah. I still think there's going to be enough of a rotation up front, and without the large chunk of snaps as a linebacker overall, I don't know if he's going to have the overall body of work to do it if those two stay ahead of him. There's going to be chances for snaps, but I don't know if it's still a big enough piece of the pie. And I think a lot of the rushing that we're going to see from him is more so A and B lined up as a mug linebacker versus at the edge. But we'll see what the rotation looks like, and we'll see who's healthy come the start of the season. But my advice on this one would be to hold that bet for now. Don't place that money yet, and let's see who's still healthy come the start of the season. If the odds are still like that and we have an injury to Singleton and Jewell, it doesn't even have to be a full season injury too. It could be, out for 4 to 6 weeks or something. And then maybe Drew Sanders comes in and plays so well that they're like, okay, we can't go back the other way. We love this ability to pressure package with him and all the different blitz looks we can do. So will be interesting, but I think it's a crowded enough linebacker room right now, and how the second level stack linebackers are kind of being phased out a tad, then at least numbers wise on the field. I would not be putting that bet on just yet, unless you had a little bit of money burning a hole in your pocket and you wanted to do something a little fun and bet on. But I personally would not be doing that right now for this team, just because I don't know if the opportunity for overall snaps is going to be there. You're right, though. The pressure packages and whatnot is probably just as important, but he's a linebacker still, and the tackles still do matter to the general media voters, unfortunately, because they don't watch everybody, and they look for the stats.
Yeah, again, it is mid-range. He's certainly not one of the favorites, but he's still getting some attention out there as a guy who can. You have to put up numbers. That's the thing. Like you're talking about offensive linemen. Offensive linemen never win it. Pablo asks, and it took me a while to find the answer to this because it's not as obvious as you might think. He says, "Good morning. When is the first joint practice to see how we match up with other teams?" It will happen after you've already had a preseason game to see how you match up with other teams. It actually happens the week you play the Rams. So the Rams are doing 2 joint practices from what I just read that they're doing. They're going to be doing joint practices with the Raiders and the Broncos when they are scheduled to play those teams. They'll come in and do some joint practices as well. They play the Rams. Let me see here.
Joint practice should be 23rd and 24th
Yeah,
of August.
it says the following week when it travels to Denver to take on the Broncos, and it's August 26th preseason finale. So that's kind of a strange time to have joint practices, in my opinion. But hey, we're coming to town. You want us to come a little early? Sure, why not? We'll get some work in. Why not?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see the Broncos' bigger players going more hard in the joint practices, which are scheduled August 23rd and 24th, and then not seeing a lot of them in that August 26th game because you've already been going at each other for 2 joint practices, right. And that's when things can get pretty ugly.
Yeah, but it's late. The game, the last the preseason finale, you don't see starters hardly at all there in any way.
No.
You want to see them early, maybe get a quarter, but you don't see a ton of them anyway.
Yeah. And also, just a kind of reminder of last year, if you guys recall, the Rams had joint practice last year. I don't remember who they were up against, but Aaron Donald, there was a scrum, and Aaron Donald was using his helmet as a weapon. So that's when you're a great player, sometimes you can get away with some of that stuff. But that's I don't know if we'll see the Broncos starters for more than a quarter.
On what you're allowed to. It's like the hot crazy scale.
Yes, exactly.
What you're allowed to get away with is absolutely, ask Owazarike, related to how important you are.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we'll be interesting to follow that. But yeah, that's coming up here. Scott, we're at 40 minutes here, and obviously still training camp stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that you've heard from Broncos training camp so far? We touched on Russell Wilson. Javonte Williams has been padded up, been going through some of the motions there. It does seem like they're still being somewhat reserved with him, as they should be. But the fact that he's out there at all is shocking to me. Is there anything else that's really standing out? So 2 things I want to touch on. It sounds like our guys, Patrick Surtain is still Patrick Surtain, being awesome, great out there. Not worried about that. I've heard Justin Simmons is potentially having one of the best camps he's ever had. Something on here we've talked about him being a player that I personally would have maybe consider approaching with a restructure to get a little bit more cap flexibility, because he's a leader on this team, and I think his play style is not one that is going to age poorly. I think he's he's still big, he's still going to be quick, and he's very long and instinctual. I think that plays well for the next 5-6 years. So I wouldn't be too worried about touching that contract with him. It also sounds like our guy is, we keep talking about being one of the most underappreciated players on this team. Quan Williams has been very, very good so far in training camp as well. So some guys, Justin Simmons and Quan Williams, really sticking out.
I'm a big fan of Kawan Williams. I really am. I'm a fan of the underdog. And you know what's he coming in making $2 million as a free agent signing? He was one of your best defensive players last year. And you heard the rant I went on Fabian Moreau. I pay attention to that stuff. Kawan Williams was maybe your best edge defender against the run last year. I mean, as a nickel corner, when someone was pulling outside and he had to set the edge, by God, he set it. He dug in and he stuck a shoulder pad into somebody's chest and he set the edge. Love that guy. And then he was obviously good as a defensive back. What was he on? $2 million? That said, somebody we've been very skeptical of, Nick, for health reasons, seems to be doing well so far. As also the word coming out is Caden Stearns. Caden Stearns is having a solid camp, which I've brought questions around, around Caden Stearns. Everybody's penciling him in as this answer when he hasn't played much at all. He had less snaps last year. He has less snaps in his career than Damari Mathis. So there were big question marks for me at that spot. And right now, Caden Stearns is answering them. And that's a very good thing, Nick.
So the Broncos have a lot of standout players right now in the secondary, but that second corner spot is going to be one of boundary corner, going to be one of potential contention for this team going forward. And as we've talked about with secondary before, it's a first to fail kind of system. So if everybody else, obviously you can kind of scheme things up where if you have one weakness, you can kind of help it, but good teams and good quarterbacks are going to isolate that one bad player in the secondary and spam that option over and over again. I mean, we saw it with, I always think of Peyton Manning in the playoffs. I think it was against Lenny Walls was the cornerback at the time, and Broncos had Champ Bailey and some good safeties back there. They did everything they possibly could to isolate Lenny Walls, and Peyton Manning went for like 350 yards and had no incompletions because they just picked that one guy out over and over again, and the offense dictates where the ball goes. So hopefully that second cornerback is not a concern here. Hopefully Riley Moss can get healthy, and hopefully Damari Mathis can step up and be a good number 2 cornerback. But that is a spot to watch right now on this defense. It's further down on the list of worries on this team overall, without a doubt, but something we want to keep an eye on, especially the Broncos felt compelled to sign Fabian Moreau after Riley Moss went out. Is that because they don't fully love Damari Mathis out there? They need a little contention from him, or is it just more of a covering your bases, protecting yourself, and getting somebody out there that can play those snaps?
We need a 90-man roster, and he's a decent player.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to make judgments on why guys were brought in when I see the 53. Until then, you're like, well, guys, they've got to have 90 players out there. You need 2 full sets of you need 2 first teams and second teams, and that's still only 44 players. So, there's another 46 players that are out there. So I'm not going to, oh my God, what are you doing signing Fabian Moreau? No, you need a 90. And if he earned a spot, he earned a spot. He cannot play the way he did for the Atlanta Falcons and make this team. Can't do it. So there's nothing to worry about. What do you worry about? The hem and hawing about Elliott Fry. I'm like, Elliott Fry's not your kicker. That's not going to happen. Let me see the 53. I'm not going to worry about the 90. Let me see the 53. I'm a little worried about the defensive line prospects because I think you need to do some things to add to a potential 53. But that's coming. That's coming. What else is coming? Michael Ranquillo is sending us out. He says, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. His second big stars. And then this one, for those of y'all that were on Facebook, you saw your screens light up because Michael just came in with 5,000 stars, which is a gigantic donation.
Wow.
And Michael, I don't know if you have committed or not committed. I hope you're going to come see us when we're there in October. Nick and I will be at the meet and greet for the Packers game. And I hope we get to meet you in person because you're a big part of our show and the things we do here, Michael. And you're one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah, we really do appreciate you. And also really hoping that you are out there. I'm planning on being out there. I need to update a few of the dates. I think I'm going to spend a little bit of time in Estes Park beforehand, just because I'm going to spend some time with the family out there. My sister and brother-in-law live in Denver. My parents like to get out to Colorado a lot. Probably one of the big reasons I'm a Bronco fan to begin with, covering the team, started following them was because of how much time my family spent in Colorado. So excited to get out there, first meet and greet, and hopefully the Broncos can get a victory on the Packers on that October 22nd game, because that game coming sandwiched between 2 Chiefs games, that could be the season right there if the Broncos end up losing 3 games in a row, unfortunately. So pretty early, but if you LLL that early, it's going to be pretty hard to come back from in the unbelievably quarterback-loaded AFC. So gotta hopefully win one of those Chiefs games. Maybe it'll be WWW. Who knows, right? Things may be changing in Denver. But we appreciate that. Michael coming in. Yeah, the 3 super chats today. I don't even know what to make of that. We appreciate you. One for every single Broncos Super Bowl champion. We got Sin G coming in here saying, Nick, what's up, my guy? Glad to see you back. What's going on, Scott? Good to see you, Sin. Hopefully you're doing well. And yeah, we're back. A few more backpacking trips planned this year, but things are changing out here. So we'll see exactly what the dates are going to be for things going forward. But yeah, excited to be back and talk to you guys about the Broncos and everything going on. Covering a lot of stuff today. Drew Sanders listed as a midline bet for Defensive Rookie of the Year. The favorite in that award they listed was Emmanuel Forbes for the Washington Commanders, just I think because of the interceptions for them. But he would probably not be my favorite. What do you think?
My favorite would be Will Anderson, and it's not close.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I don't. Nothing to add. It'd be Will Anderson without a doubt.
Maybe it was AFC. No, that's still AFC. I don't know, man. I don't know how you don't go Will Anderson on that.
Yeah, maybe it's because it's the best top bet, and the odds for Emmanuel Forbes is 15-1, where maybe Will Anderson is like 5-1 or something. So it's the best top bet versus the top bet. So
still, if I'm putting money down, I'm putting on Will Anderson.
Yeah, probably. And there's not a lot of competition for them there in Houston right now, at least. DWI guys coming in saying, another great show, gents, and Broncos country. Any word on how the tight ends are doing? Sounds like tight ends are doing pretty well overall, but again, it's going to be kind of hard to understand the tight end pecking order until we see how they go against live bullets in training camp against non-Broncos opponents, because a lot of the tight ends, in my opinion, on this team are going to be, can they hold up their end of the bargain in the run game? Can they block at all? And what does that usage look like for the non-blockers? Obviously, everybody knows Alberto Cuebanam. Obviously, everybody knows Greg Dulcich, but can they do enough that they're not just listed as a, flex option? Because if you're just a flex tight end, that really does limit your scope unless you are unbelievably athletically gifted and talented. So want to see what they can do in the run game as well. Sounds like they've been doing fine, but offense overall has not been incredible, and that trickles down to the tight ends as well.
Yeah, I think when we say Dulcich, I put him in my head as a slot receiver, Nick. I really do. I mean, he might walk in as and go down and put his hand down every so often, but when you're in a traditional tight end set with a run block option, I don't think that's Dulcich. I think Dulcich is going to be used in 3 wide and 4 wide situations a lot more often. And it's been a little slow from what the boys said last night, Ethan. On Mile High Insiders, Luke and Thomas have been at training camp, and they said that Dulcich hasn't really gotten to do, or I won't say hasn't done a whole lot to distinguish himself to this point. I'm not positive Alberto Cuebanam makes this team. I still think he's on the outside looking in, and then Manhertz is in, and you feel pretty good about that. And then Troutman wanted to get more of a chance to catch the ball, so we will see.
Yeah, without a doubt. Austin H asking us a big question here, and then we're going to wrap it on up because it is 8:30 Mountain Time here. It says, Scott, Nick, off topic, but what are your thoughts on paying running back, since that's the NFL topic right now? If Pookie gets back to normal, he could be due for an extension. I don't do it. I don't do it. I feel bad for running backs in the situation that they're in right now, but it is a bottom line business, and I'm not, they are still people, but at the end of the day, you're trying to win football games, and the best running backs in the NFL typically are the ones that are on their rookie contracts. There's always a supply of them coming into the league, and typically your best ROI on the running back position are those day 2 guys. So you draft one every 2 to 3 years in that day 2 range, maybe early day 3. You have a rotation of them. You don't pay them too much because they're not as good typically on their second contract, and it's a position that gets injured and dinged up. So now you have Javonte Williams, who's already had a significant injury that you're going to have to worry about long term. We're not sure what he's going to look like when he comes back. I think you just continue to rotate them in and not pay them and use it as a cheap position. I think the CBA is probably going to have to attack the running back contracts and what it looks like coming up here at some point. Maybe rookie contracts change to be a little bit shorter or something like that, but we'll see what happens.
There it is. You hit on it towards the end. Austin H. I'm pro athlete, 100%. Pro open market, et cetera, and it's not an open market. And once these guys hit the free agent market, if no one wants to pay them, so be it. That's it. What I would get into, though, is how in any other walk of life, a rookie wage scale with a fixed amount of years on it would probably be illegal in the United States of America. I have a bigger problem with that, where you're taking these guys who have a shorter shelf life and saying, this is what you're going to be paid based on where you were drafted without, and that's what it's going to be. And if you don't like it, then you don't play football.
Yep.
That's un-American. I've said it a zillion times. That's the NFL is a monopoly, and it grinds these guys up and spits them out, and there's not really a whole lot of options for them. Now, as ordinary people who will never see the $4 million that a rookie contract pays this guy, we don't have a lot of sympathy for these athletes that have been treated like stars their entire life. That's irrelevant to you and me. When I'm Jonathan Taylor and I look around my peers in this business and I see that my average contract has made me the 37th highest paid running back in this league, that's unfair.
Yeah.
That's unfair. Based on this is what you're going to be paid, this is where you're going to go play, and this is how long your contract is. And like I said, that's illegal in most of this country, but not here.
And I will say one thing about the running back contracts is that a lot of times their best years are honestly their first and second year in the league, and then they kind of start to get the injuries dinged up and whatnot. But at least to the benefit of the running backs, they're not really valued as much in the professional game, NFL. They're still valuable, but like long term, they're not as valuable. In some of their most valuable years before, they were not getting paid, at least not officially. At least now, the big time running backs in college football are going to get paid. They are going to be.
I had this conversation, Nick. I said the NIL will help some of these guys because Leonard Fournette was. I had this conversation. Leonard Fournette was one of the best running back prospects I saw in recent years. He would have gotten $5 million of NIL money. It's like, well, that's not as much as a second contract. Is what one of the comments I got back from Broncos country when I made the comment that NIL is really going to help these guys. Well, it's a lot more than no second contract at all.
Yep.
Which is what they're looking at now. So, if you're able to bank some of that money in your years when you are making somebody else billions with a B, YouTube, good.
Yep.
Because I had said all along, Nick, about Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette shouldn't play his third season. And we saw that happen. We saw that happen during the COVID season where guys were saying it's not worth it. And if you've got guys sitting out and not playing a sport because they're afraid of it's damaging their value, you got a problem. Something's wrong with the system.
Yep.
And that was a big indication that something was wrong. What's not wrong, Gregory Vendeland coming in big, hot pink. We haven't seen you in a while. He likes to sneak in and just bam, just drop a bomb on us like this. Hopefully that won't get flagged for being too violent. Gregory, I appreciate you so much for this.
He's Gregory Oppenheimer here. Hopefully Japan doesn't get in trouble, mad at us for that one. But also Troy Bauer coming in here saying, hey guys, welcome back. Nick, we'll listen later, but glad you're both okay. And our guy Patrick's in the house saying, aloha, good morning, sirs. Patrick is my first Lion coffee in a week because I did not bring the French press on the nearly 70-mile backpacking trip. I needed that instant coffee where you just add water. And let me tell you, I feel my soul reconnecting to my body after having a little bit of Lion coffee. So appreciate you coming in and saying hello. And guys, that's going to do it for us. 54 minutes. See, Jeremy, it wasn't just 40 minutes there. Appreciate you. But appreciate everyone coming in. Talked a lot today. It's good to be back. We will be back again next week. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that and more news in the Broncos. And we got a Hall of Fame game. We actually got some actual football coming, even though the Hall of Fame game is probably typically the single worst NFL product on the field we will see all year, other than the Broncos on Christmas. But appreciate everybody coming in and rejoining us once again. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I am at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod, as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us on Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like this show specifically with Scott and I, and share on your social media platforms, Twitch, Threads, Instagram, whatever. It'd be great. We'd appreciate that if you'd come in and do that. Scott, any thoughts before we wrap it on up here and get on with our Thursday and Friday before we're on another quick little, normal hiatus and back next week?
No, we've derailed in the chat. We're talking Vandelay Industries,
Okay.
Seinfeld, all kinds of stuff, and all sparked because of Gregory Vendeland's generosity. My final thoughts. I want to say we don't do this enough on this show, where we shout out our super chat and Facebook stars, folks. I want to make sure we do that before we get out of here. Mark Schrader kicked us off. David Cromwell with a great question with his super. Michael Ranquillo coming in with a hat trick 3 times. Miguel Steva, I still can't say your name right. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable all the time, and I'm usually pretty good with that. Gary Palmer, thank you so much. Ethan, the DWI guys, great to have you back. Hope things are going well. Gregory Vendeland coming in, announcing his presence with authority, and Troy Boer, that steady number 2 hitter who was always there for us too. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys so much coming in. Good to be back. Did survive the very long trek out there in the Sawtooth Wilderness. Had a good time, and we'll see what the rest of August holds. But we know what we did. We know what it definitely holds. More football, more important football. Broncos country, glad to be here and hanging out with you guys. We will see you guys again next week. But until then, make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.